when you're using those entry-level tools, if you ask it, how do I put this behind a password, password protection, things like that, it will explain it to you. If you ask it, how do I make this a Chrome extension, it will walk you through it.
Today, I'm very excited to be joined by Molly Mahoney. If you don't know who Molly is, she is the founder of Prepared Performer and author of AIify Your Business, Have More Fun, and Make More Money Doing What You Love. She's also the founder of the AI Content Club, a membership that helps coaches, course creators, and creative entrepreneurs use AI in their content to generate qualified leads. And AI Stars is her advanced membership. Molly, welcome back to the show. How you doing today?
I'm so grateful to be here. I love what you've been doing with this podcast. I love everything that you create. And so I'm really, really grateful.
Well, I'm super stoked to have you. Today, Molly and I are going to explore how to use AI to build powerful apps without any coding experience. And trust me, folks, you do not have to be technical or a coder to benefit from today. And let me just start by asking, are you a coder, Molly?
Oh my gosh. Well, now, no, I'm not. But I do know how to have conversations with the tools that will help me to be able to code out very beautiful, useful tools. And so I'm excited to create these apps together.
Awesome. So let's start with this question. Why should marketers and entrepreneurs who are listening right now consider making apps with AI? Said another way, if they pay attention to what we're about to talk about today, what could it make possible for them?
Yeah, so many things. So some of the problems that this has solved for me comes down to not only what I use for my clients, but also how I've used them for myself. So if you have clients who you want to go through a certain process, an app is something that can help them to complete that more quickly, more completely, and you can build in all sorts of fun, interactive assets, features within these apps. Now, we are consistently being pulled in a million different directions, whether it comes to social media or the actual media on the TV. We're being pulled in all these different directions. And what I have found is building an app like this gives us a little hub that is very interactive and helps us to accomplish even more than we could if we had a simple Google Doc or a basic website. It really is a whole new world. It's like stepping through Narnia, where all of a sudden something is really interactive. It can be playful, useful, helpful. It's just been really, really awesome.
Well, what I'm really excited about is, building an app is something many of us have always desired. We've always wanted to start like a software company, or we wanted to build something out. We say we wish there was a tool that did this, right? But it was beyond so many of our possibilities. And I know because I'm actually developing a software app, and I've hired a team in Argentina and invested ridiculous amounts of money, and it's complicated. But what we're going to talk about today is a way that you can do this so that you can actually say, oh, wow, I can bring my creativity to the table. And with the proper prompting, I can actually, in a very short period of time, get something that serves a function. Like you said, that function could serve your clients if you have an agency, or it could serve internal uses if you run a business and you have staff. Or I would imagine it could be something that you use on customer-facing side of things. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. We've had people who have signed up for programs where they get this app or this tool as a bonus. We also use these as lead generating, the actual lead magnet that we're giving people. And if you have a framework or a workflow that you're going through behind the scenes, creating an AI tool like this can actually make that whole workflow happen on its own. So it doesn't need to be something that you manually say, okay, we're going to do this, then we'll do this, then we'll do this. You create your workflow, and then it can all happen on its own, which is, it moves into that more agentic AI, which is pretty wild.
Love it. Okay. So what do we need to be thinking about before we begin creating an AI app? Because this is new ground for most of the people that are listening to this show today.
Yeah. So this is something that I've had to be really clear about, because if you do not have coding experience, you're going to see things happen at a pace that you're probably not used to. Even if you do have coding experience, you may be like, whoa, that happens faster than it did when I used all my magical coding skills, right? Now, people out in the world are calling this vibe coding, because really you can show up and just kind of vibe with the AI and tell it what you'd like. And then it's going to, at a rapid pace, write all the code that goes into the backside of this app. if you're not familiar with that, it can be a little scary. So I have created a little system that you want to have in place before you start doing this. It is 5 C's, and I can jump into them right now.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay. So the first is you want to be really clear about what it is you even want. What problem are you solving for? One thing that I think is a trap that we fall into quite often is that these new AI tools, the new possibilities, they're really cool. They're really fun once you get into it, but they don't always lead to actual business results. So I'm always clear, what is the objective? What is the problem that I'm looking to solve with this tool? So the first of these 5 C's is you want to have clarity. Okay, the next thing is courage. I can't tell you how many people, and I don't know if you've experienced this, but so many people have told me that they're like, I don't know, it just seems really overwhelming. It seems really overwhelming. And then I finally get them in front of the computer and I'm like, just type these 10 words and then magic unfolds. But the time that they spent between wanting to have this tool and typing those 10 words, there's this big courage gap. Have you noticed that people seem to be a little bit afraid of it?
I've not tried it, so I don't know, but I trust you on this one for sure. Because I've not, like, we're getting into virgin ground for me here, so I'm following along. I trust that that's correct.
Okay. And I'll be showing you later that you can actually do these things right within ChatGPT, right within Gemini, right within Claude. And then I'm going to give you my favorite tool for making this happen. But sometimes all it takes is just clicking the button. And it's that courage of like, do I actually click this? Because it's such unknown territory for most people. So courage is the second C. And then the third C, once you push through and you've used that courage, you've strengthened that courage muscle, you start to gain confidence. And I'm going to add a 6th C in here that's not officially a part of the plan. But what I've noticed is it's almost like you have to learn the choreography of how you're working with these AI tools. So now my team jokes around about it all the time because they're like, we know you can make these apps in your sleep. I now I've started to understand what I need to have up front and what to click and what to, it's like this boop, 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 and then it's done. And it feels like actual magic. And that's where you start to get the confidence. So be brave enough to play with this and that confidence will come. Okay, 2 more C's. The next is kind of surprising. It is creativity. And I know you mentioned that earlier. I love the idea that these tools don't replace us as humans. They actually amplify our awesome. And it's been amazing to me to see how I am actually becoming more creative while I get in here. And I do think, like, I'm one who has a background in, as a professional artist. I was a musical theater performer professionally. I have loads of artist friends. And I know a lot of people are really scared that these AI tools are replacing us. But I've actually become more creative because once I start getting in there and playing, it's like it unlocks. It's like a video game. It's unlocking these new levels of creativity that I didn't even know I had. It's pretty awesome.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay. And then the final one is critical thinking. This is another one where I swear AI sometimes causes people to forget that they have the ability to read because they're just like, I'm used to pushing buttons. All I do is push buttons. But we're having a conversation with these AI tools. So if you get to a point where there's an error or something is not working, it's broken, what usually happens is these tools will say, hey, this is broken. Would you like me to fix it? Most people will look at it and they'll see the error and then they're just like, and frozen. We got to slow down. Would you like me to fix it? Yes. Click the yes button, right? The other thing is sometimes you'll get down a path where somehow the code on the back end just got a little convoluted and it's just not working. Usually you can actually back up a few steps. And I loved the Nancy Drew books growing up as a kid. And this is where I find that I get to use my inquisitive Nancy Drew style, where I get to look in here and like figure out, okay, how can I make this connect even better? Where may things be a little bit off? And this is what real coders do. Things don't just work perfectly every time. I'm sure you've experienced this with your team. There's times where things are broken and they have to get in and do that investigating.
Love it. Okay. So what I heard you say is you got to be clear on what it is you want. You have to have the courage to go for it. You have to develop your confidence a little bit. That'll come the more you mess around with this thing. The creativity unlock I love. I've been saying, like, privately, I had a meeting with one of my staff members just before we came on here, and they were like, wow, how did you do that? And I said, well, I feel that anyone who has a creative skill that they've been developing over many years that understands how to use AI, it's like a massive amplifier for our creativity.
Mm.
So for those of you that are already creative, this is the unlock. This is the unique advantage you have, is that you can bring your creativity to a tool like this, and you can actually create something where others that lack creativity will struggle a little bit. And then of course you got to have that critical thinking. And I love that bonus C, that everything is choreographed kind of together. So,
Yeah.
okay. So now let's talk about like some examples of apps that you created. And I know you have 3 examples. What I'd like you to do is talk about the problem for each one of them.
Okay.
And then we're not going to get into how you made them, but how did it solve the problem? We want to just talk about like what you did and the problem that it solved, really, so people can begin to wrap their brain around this a little deeper.
Okay. So the first one that I did, just going to tell you, this helped one of our clients to bring in a $40,000 sale. And I am so blown away. I am using this app every single day. And so here was the problem. Inside our higher level coaching program called Multiply, we have this set of 5 action steps that you can do every single day that will help to unlock more revenue in your business. So some of the things, I'll just give you a couple of them, are very simple. The first is set your intention. And then we have a whole thing for connecting with your vision and really being clear about what you want for your day. The next is talk to humans. And then we have little messenger templates and email templates that we give them. But even though we have this all templatized in a Google Doc, I found that a lot of our clients weren't actually putting these things into action. So I created this thing that we call a task buddy. So this task buddy takes whatever those actions are, the habits that you want to build, and then it turns it into an app. And so now this app, it's our Star Task Buddy. And what this does is it gives them a prompt every day to complete their STAR tasks. And these 5 things, when they click through it, they can record, did they set their intention, and then make a little note. There's also links that go back to our portal if they want more support and how to create their vision. And then they can check it off for the day. They do the same thing for all the other steps. And then all within this app that I created just by talking to AI, it then goes to a calendar where you can see whether or not you have actually completed the tasks, how often. And then once people started using it, I added another section where at the end of every day, they record how many sales did they make and what was the new revenue they generated. Then on our coaching calls, when someone tells me that they're stuck, I can say, great, pull up your task tracker. Let's look at your task buddy. And if they haven't been doing their tasks, then I can say, okay, well, this is why it's not working, right? It gives us a starting point to help them be more accountable. It has been awesome.
I love it. You got 2 more examples.
Yep. Okay. The next one is an onboarding map. And so, secret, I'm actually going to give you this one as an example at the end of this podcast episode. So keep listening. This onboarding map I have been using for 2 different things mainly. One is for our courses and our programs. When people come into the program, so in AI Stars, for example, there's a lot of content that they get. And so it can feel really overwhelming. Now, this isn't just for people who are teaching online courses. I've recently been going to this super awesome golf gym with my husband. And when you first do something new, whether it's in person or an online program, it can feel overwhelming because you're not fully onboarded yet. Right. And so what I did is I created an onboarding map that gives them a little quiz that they go through. They go through this quiz. AI is on the backside of this app, and then it creates their own bespoke journey through the program based on their own desires, needs, and all of that. And then it links them back to where they need to go.
So the problem with this one was what exactly?
That people get overwhelmed when they're first starting something. And even though you are super clear in the emails that you send them, in the thank you page that they get after they buy, it still can feel really overwhelming. And so when they go to the app, it feels like they get to be a part of the onboarding process because they go through this quiz. Now, here's the secret. In our program, everyone, no matter what level they're at, they all start in the same place at the Start Here course. But still, we get so many people saying, oh my gosh, I don't know where to start. And then I say, go where it says Start Here. Well, this has made it more like it feels that someone is giving them a hand holding as they're going through the process. Everyone is led to that Start Here spot in the program. And then the rest of the journey is really customized to who they are, their own unique experience within the
I
program.
love this because you could develop it differently. If you had like what we have with our AI Business Society, I could see an app that asks them a series of questions and then recommends a series of training customized just for them, right?
Exactly.
Based on, because we have a lot of stuff in there based on
Yeah.
what their particular interests are. So it could take them to a custom place if you wanted to, right? Which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And so that ours does take a custom place after the first one. The first one is the same. Shh, don't tell anybody. Yeah. Right. But like if you have recordings, I'm sure you guys have a bunch of recordings of calls and all kinds of things in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it customizes it for them based on what they want right now.
Love it. Okay. And then you got another one.
Okay. And then the third one is something that I call workbook magic. So if you are hosting a workshop or you are taking someone through a course or a class, or we could even have done it for this podcast episode, to be totally honest, oftentimes there's a couple of problems that come up. People are taking notes and they're not really fully paying attention and they'll miss things. Mm-hmm. If they have a Google Doc, then it's like just a standard thing that they read and they can kind of tune out. But what we have found, and I'm sure you've seen this even when people are speaking at events, when someone hands you a workbook that you fill in as you go that's interactive, it really brings the learning into a full like 4D type of learning where they're fully engaged and interacting with you while you're teaching. And so we created an app that is a workbook for a 2-day workshop, and it gives them like just enough to get them started, but they feel like they're a part of the process. And people were blown away when we first released this over a 2-day event. Things that I had been teaching them for months, they all of a sudden got because, again, it felt bespoke. It gave them that interactive experience.
Love it. Okay, folks. So you just heard 3 examples: the Task Buddy, the onboarding map, and the workbook magic options, just to kind of whet your appetite of what is possible and what Molly has done. And I feel like that was really important for us to spend a minute on that, because so many of us, the idea of building an app is just like, we just think of these crazy complicated apps that we use every day, like Asana or StreamYard or whatever the heck, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be that. It could be very, very specific, which is what I love. Okay. So now let's get into the practical brass tacks of it all. What are the apps, the tools? I'm not even going to use the apps. I'm going to say, what are the tools that we need to use in order to be able to create our own app?
Okay. And I'm glad you mentioned the word app also, because sometimes I get stuck because you can build things that are applications inside like the Apple App Store and the Play Store with Google. But what I'm talking about today is more of a web-based app. And then you can take another step to actually turn it into something that you download on your phone. I think that word can be a little confusing sometimes. So this is a web-based app, an application. All kinds of things can happen with this. And there are several tools that you can use. And the tools may actually really surprise you. So ChatGPT is the tool that I find most people are familiar with. So let's just start with the easiest way to do it. And ChatGPT just had a huge update, which is inside the Canvas section inside ChatGPT. So if you're not familiar with it, when you're in ChatGPT, there's a little section called Canvas. And what it does is it's almost like it opens up a little bit of a Google Doc inside ChatGPT. Well, now that Canvas section, you can actually ask regular ChatGPT to create an app for you, a website, whatever it is, and it will create it inside that Canvas. And then at the top right, there's a little button that says preview. And now all of a sudden, it's a real standalone app, web application hosted within ChatGPT.
Love it.
Wild.
Okay. So you can do that with ChatGPT and others too, right?
Yeah. And so then you can actually do this within Gemini. It's also called Canvas. So when you click on Gemini, it looks a little bit different on the bottom of the screen. You just click Canvas and the same process. It works the same way. I've tested it across all of these tools and we're going to get to the one that I love the most. I would say ChatGPT is the most basic. Then the next one would be Gemini, and Gemini does the same kind of thing where it builds it in there. You get a preview link. And then the third one is actually within Claude. You can do the same thing and you'll get the preview link. You do that inside artifacts inside of Claude. Now, there's one big caveat for all 3 of these. When you share the link and someone else opens it on their side, it will have a little warning on the bottom of the screen that says something like, someone else created this tool. be careful. And I personally don't ever want someone to think they're going to be hacked because they're using my app. So that's one thing to be careful about with the first 3 versions.
Here's, before we get into the new the new variation, the coding world loves Claude. Like this is their app of choice, and a lot of the really sophisticated coding tools are powered by Claude. So if you already have a Claude account and you're an active user of Claude, I would probably start with Claude just because I know that it's really sophisticated. But I'm even more excited about what you're about to talk about, which sounds like a complete turnkey solution, right? So talk about that.
And I think you made a really good point that not only does the coding world love Claude, Claude loves the coding world. So they have recently said they are going to double down on being the best coding application, the best coding AI tool. So I know they are going down that path. Now, some of the problems that we run into, though, if you're using something like ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini, is that you don't have a password protection. So what you can do is take the code from Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT and embed that code inside another tool like High Level or Kajabi. They all have the ability to embed the HTML code inside, which is great. The other thing is when you're using those entry-level tools, if you ask it, how do I put this behind a password, password protection, things like that, it will explain it to you. If you ask it, how do I make this a Chrome extension, it will walk you through it. So I've made Chrome extensions using Claude, using Gemini, using ChatGPT, and it's great at telling you what to do. The problem is that it takes a lot of time. And if you aren't a coder, it's like, ugh, and you don't have the option to see what people are doing with these tools or to see like a database of who's using it if you're simply using it on these more entry-level types of tools. So, do you want to move into the tool?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, there are several tools that you can use now where you're able to build something a little more high level, a little more
sophisticated.
We'll say it again.
Sophisticated.
Sophisticated. That would be a perfect word. Sophisticated, elegant, right? A little more advanced. Some of them are things like Lovable, Bolt, and my absolute favorite for getting started with this is called Base 44. Now, I'm going to tell you some of the problems that I've had with other tools and why I love Base 44 so much for this. So in the other tools that are a little more sophisticated, you actually have to connect it to some sort of database on the back end if you want someone to have their own unique information when they log in. So for example, in my task tracking app, when any of my members log in, every time they log in, the numbers are the same. I have been tracking my tasks for about a month and a half now since I created this new task app. And when I go there, my tasks that I logged from last month are still there. The notes that I took are still there, and no one else can see that information. With Base 44, it actually sets up the whole thing for you, and without any fancy need to add another forward-facing login page, it's all built in. It allows people to have their own individual login using the Google email world. So as long as they have a Gmail account, they can log into this app, and you can set the privacy on the back end for how you want people to be able to access it.
Yeah, and just a little bit, because I've been going down, like I mentioned, we're becoming a software development company, and the database is the key to the whole thing, because with a kind of a one-off app, where it just does a basic function, every time you come to it forgets who you are, it forgets everything about you. But the idea of a database allows all that data to be stored so that when you come back to it, it's essentially continuing where you left off or allowing you to reference what you've done. And that's kind of the key thing. And with a lot of these other tools, you have to take the code, then you have to go set up a Firebase account with Google or some other cloud-based thing, and then you got to figure out how to get the APIs to talk. It's kind of a nightmare, right? And there's a lot of that stuff, but it sounds like Base 44 is like an all-in-one solution. Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say?
100%. And it has integrations on the back end. Now, if you are a fancy coder and you have the ability to do all those fancy things, this may feel like child's play to you, but to the rest of the normal humans on the planet, this is like actually magic. And our clients have just been blown away that I've been able to create these tools for them. And I've showed them how to create tools for their clients as well. It's awesome.
So with Base 44, do you have to bring your code from one of the platforms, or can you use it to code? Let me rephrase. Can you use it to prompt the coding? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah. I totally understand. So that's what's really so magical about it. All you have to do, so you could start by saying, create an app that tracks my water intake.
With Base 44 code. Is what you're saying.
With Base 44. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you log in, there's a chat feature on the left-hand side, and it's basically just like you're talking to ChatGPT. It will chat. It chats back and forth with you. And then on the right-hand side, it has a preview option there where you can see the updates happening in real time, and you can test it kind of like if you're using WordPress and you're able to be in that version of WordPress where you can edit things on the front. You can see it like that and see it in action. Now, I have learned through my trial and error with this that it's the best if you can give it all the information up front so that it creates it from the beginning with everything that you want.
Now, before we get there, we're going to get to how to build it in just a second. Talk to me about, so far what we know about Base 44 is it sounds like it's got a database. It also sounds like it hosts all the code, right? So you can have, instead of that error message, you can send them to a link. Is that correct? And it's all like, it's kind of like they're like your own little installation of WordPress or whatever, right?
Exactly.
And then talk to me about visuals too, because I know that was an important.
Oh yeah. So I was showing Mike the visuals before we actually recorded this, because I used the same exact prompt within ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Base 44. And it was night and day, because the visuals that come out of Base 44, they just look more elegant.
When you say visuals, you mean kind of like the user experience, the visual interface kind of thing? Okay, got it.
The way that it
lays
looks
out
as a user. Some of the things that came out of Gemini, I couldn't even read because the color contrast was way off. The buttons that you click just weren't laid out. There was not a good UI to it. And overall, it just has looked so much better than what I've been creating with the other apps. So,
by the way, folks, this is like a big deal for those of you that don't understand coding. Typically, you have to go hire a user interface, user experience designer. They have to design it in a tool called Figma, and then you got to export all these things out. So this thing literally sounds like it does everything, which is really cool.
I want to be careful about the word better, because I know that better is not a quantifiable
Well, it's probably
term.
better, but it's better than what the typical AIs will produce.
It is, and it's more user-friendly. It's more visually appealing. It's more coherent. It looks more elevated. And these are little things like behind a box, there'll be a shadow that makes the box look like it's standing out.
That's
Whereas
cool.
in the other apps, it all just kind of looked the same, as if it was almost a Google Doc with color behind it.
Love it. Okay. So Base 44 is, what does it cost?
Ooh, that's a good question. There are different.
Is it pretty reasonable? I mean,
yeah. And I'll explain like the way that they set up the payments actually. I'm going to look it up right now, so I'm not lying to you. Yeah. Oh my gosh, we talked about this. I forgot. There is a free option, which obviously eventually you're going to have to pay. But the free option, you can definitely get started with it. And they charge you based on two different things. One is how many messages you're sending. So that's why we're going to get to it. But you want that first prompt to be really good. And then you want to try and chunk your prompts together, because each message that you send, you get a certain amount of messages. And then the other thing is, if you end up integrating it on the back end to something like OpenAI, it will charge you based on those integrations as well. But after the $0 free plan, there's a $20 plan, a $50 plan, a $100 plan, and a $200 plan. So I find that it's really nice that it grows with you. It's amazing.
Okay, so here's what we know so far. What we know so far is that if you wanted to, you could go ahead and go over to Claude or whatever your system is and start ideating and take the code potentially, or the prompts or whatever, and go into Base 44. But what we're going to talk about is a presupposition that you're starting with just a really good prompt. So let's talk about like how do we actually build this app? And we've already hinted it's a prompt, right? But like you hinted it could be as simple as 10 words. So like, what do we need to know, you know?
Yeah. So it could be as simple as 10 words. If you know what you're looking to create, so let's use the water tracking app, for example, then you could go in and you could say, I'd like like, please create, I'm always kind to my AI. We never know what's going to happen in the future. Please create a water tracking app. Let's see. Please create a water tracking app with
you don't have to
login. That's 10 words.
Okay. Yeah. It doesn't have to be 10 words. Okay. But keep going. Joking. So in an ideal world, what do we include in the prompt?
Yeah. So actually, and I'm going to read this off of a list of things that I've put because I actually created a really long system for it, which I'm going to give you right now. You want to make sure that you have the user types. So identify, do you want people to be able to edit this on their side? Do you want an admin login? Do you want private login? One mistake that I made in the beginning is I wasn't clear that I wanted to have a log out button.
Okay. That makes sense.
Right. And so you have that, you want to be clear about what type of user type.
Okay. Real quick. Let's just go through these one at a time. So on the user types, when you say user types, you could have different classes of users, right? For example, premium versus basic, an administrative login that has special features. That's kind of what you mean about the different types of users, right? Is that really what I'm hearing you say? Think that through a little bit.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, and this is on the backside of Base 44, you can actually set how people log in. So is it invite only? Is it something where anyone with the link can log in? Or is it just public where anyone can see it, at any time? I didn't realize until playing with it a few times that you could actually set it so that anyone could edit it, which I think is crazy. But if it's like a collaborative tool, kind of like Wikipedia or something, you can set it up that way as well.
Okay, cool. Keep going. So first we've got the user types. What comes next?
Okay, then we're going to move into the core features. And so the core features are things like, I want them to be able to, I'm going with this water tracker idea, but I want people to be able to take a photo of their empty water bottle to prove that they've done it and upload the photo. I want people to be able to click each time they finished a gallon of water. I want people to be able to, you want to know what they're going to be able to do. Then you want to be clear about how you want the data to be connected on the back end. Another mistake that I had made, one time I created an app and I wasn't clear that each person's answers should only be stored in their individual data set. So with their unique ID. And what ended up happening with that one is that the answers were shared all across the board. That is not what we want to do. So now I'm always really clear that we have each person who logs in has their own data set that is only shared with them.
Okay, real quick. Summarizing so far what I've heard you say. First of all, think about those user types. Secondly, think about the core features. And then also think about the data access, who gets to see what. You called it data structure, I believe.
Yeah.
Back to the core features.
Okay.
If you don't know what the core features should be, I can imagine you can go over to your AI tool of choice and you could say, I'm developing an app to track people's daily water intake. What do you think some of the features should be, right? I mean, you could start doing that over there, right?
Definitely. And then you're going to use less messages inside of Base 44. So you can use ChatGPT to brainstorm it. We have two different GPTs that we've created for this. One is just to help you to come up with the idea in the first place.
Right.
And then the other is to help you figure out everything that needs to go in there. So like for this task tracker that I made, it not only tracks the tasks, it has the calendar display, and it has a whole other dashboard that shows them their progress overall. So you can have the different types of displays, different buttons that you want them to be able to have. Is it tracking their progress? Are they unlocking badges? Different things like that would all be features.
One of the things we talked about when we were prepping was user flow. Talk to me about that and why that's so important.
Okay. So in the quiz one that I did, the onboarding app, what I wanted to happen with the user flow with that is that when they first came to this onboarding app, I wanted them to see something that was like, welcome to the program, welcome to the magic, here's your quiz. And so when they go through the quiz, then it's going to give them their individualized path. Every time they log in after that, it gives them the path. They don't have the quiz anymore. But I realize sometimes people change. And so I wanted them to have an ability to go back and retake the quiz. All of that is really the whole experience you want them to be able to have through it. And you can play with that stuff after you started building it. But as clear as you can be ahead of time, the better, so that the backside is all set up in a nice way without a bunch of Band-Aids.
Love it. Okay, back to the data structure thing, which we kind of hinted about a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we talked about the data access. I want to talk about structure a little bit. Like if this is in a database, I would imagine we have to kind of identify what the, for lack of better words, variables are that we're collecting, right? And storing.
Yep.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So this is one that I have gotten very specific about, and I've also stayed kind of like open. So sometimes if I have, let's say, a Google Doc of a process, I will load the Google Doc in and say, this is what I want you to do. And then it kind of, comes up with the cells or those little, I don't know what you would call it. What do you call that?
Fields.
Like a field. Thank you. Yeah. Like a custom field inside an email provider. You know how you have the custom field or in ManyChat, it's like a bot field. Whatever that field is, that is storing information on the back end. And so when you look at the back end of this, you'll find that even if it's not something that they're typing the answer in, it actually will save a field based on what they're clicking on, different things like that. So it will put this whole data structure behind the scenes. Now, one thing that's a little different about Base 44, and so if you, just to keep this in mind, since it is creating its own data structure right there and you're not connecting it to something like Airtable, it's going to create that data structure on the back end. And from what I've seen, and I've built a lot of apps here, you're not actually able to see who answered which questions or who did which thing. So as the creator of the app, you'll have that database. You can see when they're logging in, but I'm not able to see every person's individual. Like there's a little more privacy for the people who are using it, which I think in the long run is a good thing.
Well, and when people start to think about the wormhole of data, there's a lot of fascinating data. Like you could ask it to log each time they log in, count the number, increase by 1. You could have it track, for example, when they log in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the date and the location. There's like lots of data that you could do with this, right?
That is a really great idea that even on the task tracker, that could be something that shows to them that's like, hey, this is your 39th time logging in. Congratulations.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. And that's just another piece of data that you got to track, right? But obviously, we're not trying to get complicated here, but we're just helping people open their eyes to the possibilities. Now, you mentioned integrations. Let's talk about automations and integrations.
Yeah, so they actually have several integrations built in that are easy that you can just click and say, like, I wanted to integrate with this. I don't have the whole list, and I know that it's updating all of the time, but you can actually connect it to several other tools. And there's an option for you to be able to build in your own integrations with APIs and webhooks and things like that. But just right out of the gate, there's several things that you can connect it to. Also, I find it amazing that you don't even need to connect it to something like ChatGPT or OpenAI in order for it to have the ability to give people an AI generated response. So we've had some clients that it is giving them individual, not like a if this then that type response, but it's actually writing AI language, like it's writing things with AI on the back end without actually connecting it to anything else. And so you'll see within there's a charge for that, just like with any tool like this, but it's pretty wild.
So typical integrations might include something like Zapier, Make, N8N, those kind of integrations. Are those included?
Show you. I just pulled it up. It has Monday.com, OpenAI text to speech, which I think is cool. HubSpot, Explorium. These are the most upvoted. Hold on, let me show you. Okay. Yeah.
There's probably a bazillion of them. My guess is there's
Slack.
Yeah, there's a million of them, right?
Yeah,
all the big tools everybody probably uses, right? Which is kind of cool.
Just like anything, there's more and more that they're adding every day.
Yeah, like if you use Asana, and Asana is one of the integrations, this could be an internal tool for your staff, right? For all sorts of cool stuff. Like, for example, we could create a tool for onboarding speakers at our conference, and it could go right on into Asana.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. So talk to me about like editing and design, layout stuff, because obviously you're going to want to do that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. So this is something else that I think is really neat. You can use different icons or different images. And if you have a public image file that you can load in there, it can bring your images in, which I find to be super awesome. But then it also pulls icons from different public icon databases. And so you can customize, with one of them, I got so specific about customizing the exact hex code to, in a gradient on the actual little square image thing. So I've had so much fun playing with this, and they have several different style guides that they give you where you can choose between these different styles if you want to use one of their set versions that they have, or you can actually create your own style as well. You can even take screenshots of other tools or apps that you love and base it off of something that you love, or design it inside of Figma or Miro or something else like that, where you're actually designing it ahead of time.
Can you edit it once you've created it? Well, let me back up. Actually, I might be getting ahead of myself. I'm assuming we're creating a huge prompt, right? And we have like descriptions on the user types and the core features and descriptions on the user flow and data structures and layout and buttons and images and all that kind of stuff. Once you've done that, how does it work if you want to modify it? That's probably the big question, because with software, you're always going to want to improve it, right?
Yeah. And I actually was a little concerned about one of the apps that I built because it was and it's very similar to one that I'll actually give you today. It was an onboarding app for a workshop that we did on how to build an app. And it had the 4 tools that I recommended. And then it had pros and cons for each, like for the free and the paid version on each of the tools. And then it had a button at the bottom with where to go to get the tools. But the 2 boxes on the top, one had more text than the other. And so the buttons were not lined up. They were like askew a little bit. And I thought, man, on a WordPress website or in a tool like High Level or ClickFunnels, I can go there and I can set the margin, right? And like guide it, but you can't do that necessarily here. But they do have an option for you to click and edit it from the visual side so that you can select the exact section and then talk to it right there. But what I usually do is I take a screenshot of the section that I want to fix. And so what I did with this is I said, hey, these buttons are not even. Can you please add more of a margin on top of the button on the right?
Now that is killer, because everybody's like, wow, that's the magic unlock, right? You're effectively telling it in everyday language, writing it in with the screenshot. Hey, can you figure out how to align this?
Yeah, that's it.
And that's like what everybody wants, because normally they'd have to call up a person and say, hey, I need you to monitor blah, 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 blah. Instead, you're telling it to the AI, and the AI is effectively recoding the whole thing for you. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
100%. And then
wow.
I've had moments where, it's not exactly perfect. And so then sometimes I'll get like very stern with it and be like, yo, I want this to match this. And it has been absolutely amazing. I can say things like, for example, it had a little button, a little like circle next to a bunch of things that said in progress or something. And I said, all of the in progress buttons, please remove those. Bloop, all of them were gone.
Okay, so be honest about how much time this really takes when you go down this rabbit hole. You know what I mean? Like, I know the first prompt is easy, but there's going to be enormous amount of modifications that you're going to want to mess with, right?
Okay, yeah. And so what has happened for me is I've actually found that I now have 5 templates that I can use as a starting point because of the different things that I've created. So I duplicate it and then I make adjustments. I've learned, it's been really... Granted, the first couple that I made, that first star task one that I did, but with the first task tracker, it took me a long time. I stayed up for several hours overnight playing with it because it was building not only just the task tracker, but I was linking each of those sections back to individual links inside our portal for people to get the exact resource they wanted. And really what happened for me with that one, it was pretty good just within 15, 20 minutes. But I thought, wow, this could be even better. Oh my gosh, it could be even better. Like, the Savannah bananas?
Yeah.
Okay. I am 100% obsessed. And I've been going back and listening to Jesse's Yellow Tux podcast from like 2017. And he talked about the idea of plussing. Do you know that idea?
No. Jesse Cole, right? Isn't that?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And did he speak at Social Media Marketing World?
No, but he's been on my podcast, and he was a regular at Social Media Marketing World when he was building the Savannah Bananas brand.
I remember always seeing him and now knowing what he's built. So if you don't know what the Savannah Bananas are, they are basically a comedy baseball troupe. I love them, and I got to see them here in Anaheim 2 weekends ago. They sold 90,000 tickets. It was their biggest weekend ever.
So what's the concept you're about to introduce?
Plussing is a concept that he got from Walt Disney, and it's this idea that we always want to be making things better, that, it's a living, breathing thing that can continue to be improved upon. And that's another thing that I love about this tool. And I get goosebumps when I think about it, because now I've deployed this task tracker, right? One of our members within a week brought in an extra $40,000 because she's using this thing. And then on the call, someone says, man, I wish I could track my revenue on it. And I'm like, oh, you can. So I go back and I ask it to add that, and it instantly updates it without breaking things across everyone's app who has it.
I love it. Well, what's really cool is folks that are concerned about the time, Molly has put together a cool little resource. She has a custom GPT that will allow you to go from idea to app prompt generator. So why don't you tell everybody where they can get that? Because this can save them an enormous amount of time, right?
Okay. Yeah. So what I did is I took all of the really important core features and I've created a GPT that will write, I call it the source prompt. So it's that initial prompt that will get you started. This is going to save you on the amount of messages that you have to send. It's going to give you clarity because it's going to ask you questions until you get all the proper information in there.
Perfect.
And if you don't know the answers, you can just say, make it up, and it'll make it up. Okay. But to get it, you're going to go to molly.live, MOLLY.live/AIE pod, POD.
For AI Explored. So it's molly.live.com/AIE pod. Perfect. Yeah. And that is a custom GPT, everybody. So that means you can just open up ChatGPT, click on it, and then it's free, right? And you just go ahead.
Even if you have the free version of ChatGPT, this is something that we have in our higher level programs. But when Mike and I were talking about this, my real mission is for people to realize that they can do this. It can actually be easy for you. You just need to have those foundations in place and have the courage to be able to push the buttons to move forward.
Okay, we have another resource that Molly's given away. We'll mention in just a second.
Okay.
But first of all, I just want to say thank you for making this approachable and easy to understand, because I know everyone that's listening is like, okay, I've got confidence now that I listened to this podcast and I listened to Molly. I want to ask, where can people discover you on the socials? And then if they want to work with you, where do you want to send them? And then we'll mention that last resource.
Okay, yeah. So Molly Mahoney is my name on my personal Facebook profile, and LinkedIn, where I do loads on Facebook, a little bit on LinkedIn. But if you're hanging out on Instagram, The Prepared Performer is my handle there. I would love to connect. Send me a message. I have so many resources. I'd love to get you going in the right direction. And same thing, thepreparedperformer.com has all sorts of information on how you can actually put this stuff together.
Sweet. And then go ahead and mention that other resource.
Yeah. Okay. So what I decided to do also, I took the onboarding app that I built for an event that we did called an AI Appathon, where we built out 4 different types of apps during the Appathon. And I gave you a little streamlined version of it. And so it's going to have links to all of my favorite tools and the ways to use them to be able to create these apps yourself. And to get it, you just go to molly.live/AIA guide. So it's like AI app guide. molly.live/AIA guide. And I'm sure both of these will also be in the show notes.
They will. You'll find them wherever you're listening to this podcast in the show notes. Molly Mahoney, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
I'm so great. I can't wait to see you again at Social Media Marketing World.
See you then.
Bye.